Welcome to the eMedication Reconciliation e-learning video. Medication reconciliation is a structured, shared process whereby which healthcare professionals, 1. Work with the client, family, and caregivers as appropriate, and at least one other source of information to generate a best possible medication history, or BPMH. A BPMH is a list of all medications, including prescription, non-prescription, traditional, holistic, herbal, vitamins, and supplements. 2. Identify and resolve differences or discrepancies between the BPMH and medications ordered at transition points. 3. To document and communicate up-to-date information about client medications to the client and their next service provider as appropriate. If I am a nurse working in the eMERGE department and I want to document my patient's home medication history, I would go into my nurse tracker in the EDM module, highlight my patient, and click on the Triage Documentation tab. This takes me into the Patient Triage Documentation screen. Here I will notice there is a new header added called the Active Prescriptions or Reported Meds routine, and if I highlight that and click on the Document tab, I will be launched into the MedRec routine. I can also click on the Reconcile Meds tab, which will launch me into the routine as well, or if I'm admitting my patient from the eMERGE department and I need to update my medication reconciliation routine, I can highlight my patient, click on the Depart tab, and I enter the Depart screen. In here, staff will notice that there is a Reconcile Meds tab as well. If I am a nurse working in an inpatient or outpatient department and I want to access my patient's Reconcile Med routine, I would go into my status board, go into my list of patients, highlight my patient that I want to document my home meds on, and click on my Reconcile Treatment tab. Regardless of how I enter the medication reconciliation screen, the functionality and look remains the same. Users will notice that there is an allergy tab at the top right hand side of the screen, which I can click and enter to document or view my patient's allergy management screen. Also, you'll notice that after we go live with medication reconciliation that all of our patients' MedRec screens will be blank. To enter data onto the MedRec screen, we need to click on the Update MedList tab. For this patient, if I'm interviewing them and I ask them if they're on any current home medications and they state that they currently do not have any medications at home, I can easily click on the Set Profile to No Meds, and it automatically files home meds, no active or reported meds to this patient's profile. If I interview my patient and they state that they are currently on home medications, I can enter those home medications by using the Update MedList tab. When I enter the screen, you will notice a list of medications in the window. This is what we call the master's favorite list. I can start typing, and if the medication isn't found in the favorites list, it will launch me into the RxM formulary. If I want to just search in the formulary, I can click on the Go to All Meds tab. I can also easily go back into my favorites list. So my patient tells me they are on Lasix 40 milligrams PO daily. I start typing my medication. The medication will fall into the window, and I will click on the one with the appropriate strength. You'll notice when I click on that, I am taken into the favorite strings window, and we have pre-built various strings related to this medication. If a string is not available for the appropriate dose for your patient, you can always free text your dose, your units, your route, and your frequency into the above windows. But I can double click on the dose the patient states they're on. The information defaults into the windows. We are currently not using these fields, and we are currently not using this field, and we are currently not using the date field. If the patient states that they take a medication with specific instructions, you can click on the instruction field and you can free text an instruction comment, or I can click on the Get key to get to canned text. I would click on my text key, and there are a few pre-built canned text options. So I can grab one and click OK, and it pulls that information into the instruction window. And I also want to enter my information source for this particular medication. If I click on the down arrow, I'm taken into the relationship dictionary, but you'll also notice that there are a lot of information at the bottom of the screen pertinent to medication reconciliation. If your patient is unresponsive or demented and you are unable to obtain a medication history from them, you may be obtaining it from a medication list or pharmacy or a MAR from another facility, etc., or you're looking at the patient's bottles or vials. But I'm getting my history from my patient, so I click on Self. And if I'm happy with the information I've entered, I click Done. And I am then launched into the last taken screen. When I am in the last taken screen, I can input the date that the medication was last taken by clicking on the free text field where I enter the date, month, and year. If today is the last time the patient took it, I can click on Today to default. If it was yesterday or the day before, I can click on the calendar, or I can click on the previous month or year. If I don't know the date and time it was last taken, I can click on the unknown date and time or the unknown dose field. If I click on the unknown dose field, it will automatically populate the dose field with unknown. I can put the time it was last taken if known. I can enter the dose if known, and it's very important to put exactly what the person has taken. Sometimes patients will half their dose, so maybe they only took 20 milligrams even though they're prescribed 40, or sometimes they have a dose range. Again, you want to get your information source of your last taken information, and it searches the same dictionary. I obtain this information from my patient. If they know what the purpose of the medication is, you can free text it in. And if there's any comments appropriate for the last taken, for example, the patient takes it normally every morning, but this morning they didn't take it because they were nauseated. So you would enter that your last taken was yesterday morning and the comment that it was not taken this morning due to nausea or vomiting, whatnot. Below that, we have an attention required field. It defaults to no, but I can answer yes if perhaps the patient doesn't know the name of the medication or we're not exactly sure of the dosing, etc. I can click on attention required. If I'm happy with the information I've entered, I can click OK, and you'll notice at the top of my Update Med List routine it states that I have one new reported medication filed. If my patient states that they are on insulin, maybe a regular insulin by sliding scale, I'm not going to be able to enter my dose in units, but I can enter my route and I can enter my frequency. I can also look into these dictionaries if I click on it, or free text, and F11 to get out. In my instruction field, if I click on my get key and I go into my canned text, I can choose various options for sliding scale. I can just choose that it's by sliding scale, or perhaps it's the patient knows what their sliding scale is or it's on their medication list, so I can actually enter all of that information through the canned text, remembering you have to enter through everything to file. If I'm happy with the information added, I click OK. It pulls the information into the instruction window. I can enter a comment if appropriate, and I also want to capture my information source. Again, it's from my patient. I can start typing and click the answer out of my pick list. When I've completed it, click Done, and then I can enter the last taken. So it was taken on the 7th at 2000, and I took 4 units, and it's my patient telling me this. If I want to enter a purpose and any comment if pertinent, and click OK. I've now added 2 medications to my patient's medication profile. If I have completed entering my patient's medication, I can click Done, and you will see that the medications are filed under their patient's home medication header. When I'm in my medication reconciliation screen, I can view the details of any of my listed medications. By highlighting the medication, I can click on the View Detail tab, and I am taken into the View Medication Information screen. I can see what the medication is at the top and the date it was reported, and I can also use the scroll bar and scroll through all the past documented entries. And I can close to go back to my medication list. If I need to change a medication on my patient's profile, I can highlight the medication that I need to make a change to, click on the Change tab, and update the appropriate information. So the patient states that they actually only take 20 milligrams, but the instructions information is the same. I can change the source if required. So maybe I'm getting the information from the wife, and click Done. If I want to update the last taken information, I just click on the last taken field and update the information as appropriate. If I need to enter another medication on my patient's profile, I click on the Update Med List, and note that there are other ways to search for medication. I can look by type, so when I look up, I can look by narcotics, generics, trades. Also, if I can't find a medication when I'm searching in the window and it's not available in my favorites or the formulary, I can enter a medication as undefined. So I click on the undefined field, and automatically it tells me that this medication will not be evaluated for interaction checking. So it's always very important after entering an undefined med that somebody clarifies what that medication is as soon as possible and updates the MedRec routine. So maybe this patient states that they take a little blue pill, and they don't know what the strength is, but they say they take 1 tablet by mouth at bedtime. And there aren't any instructions pertinent for this particular medication, and maybe I'm getting the source from my patient. And click Done. I'm taken into the last taken field, so I enter the information as appropriate. Who I got the last taken information from, what its purpose is, and any comments. And this particular medication would require some attention. It needs some clarification by the physician or the pharmacist. I click OK, and it says I've added 1 new medication, and I can click Done. So you'll now see that the little blue pill is added to my home meds, and there's also a flag on the last taken that this particular medication needs some attention. Every time a patient presents to your facility, you need to review their home medications with them. You need to look at all of the existing medications on their home list. You need to update what their last taken was if it's still active on their profile, and then you need to review all of the medications. If a medication has been put on hold or discontinued or canceled, you need to document that information off of the screen. So to update the last taken information, you just highlight the medication and click on the last taken field and input your last taken time. What your information source was, and file. Once you've updated all of your last taken information, you can highlight the review for each of your meds to state that you've reviewed them, and this is just documenting that you've actually interviewed your patient and reviewed their home med list with them. Once you input a change, you'll notice your Submit tab highlights. I click on my Submit, and it takes me into my medication reconciliation summary screen. Inside of this screen, I'll note that all of my medications have been reviewed, and I'll also notice at the top of my screen that there is a preferred pharmacy field. So anytime I use the Submit tab, I can input what my patient's pharmacy is. The only problem with our current version of Meditech is that you can't actually view that information anywhere unless you click on the Submit tab. So we will be implementing the preferred pharmacy in future rollouts. Once I've reviewed my medications, I can click on OK, and I'm taken back into my screen, and I note that the Review tab is now blank. And if I want to ensure that that information was documented, I can click on the View Detail, and I can scroll through and see when it was last edited, and at the bottom I can see that it was reviewed. If a medication has been put on hold since the patient's last been in hospital, you just highlight that medication, click on the hold, and file and submit. Inside, I get a last review and click on OK. You'll notice on the medication reconciliation screen now that medication has been put on hold, states held over the reported, and I can no longer put it on hold because it's currently on hold. If a medication has been canceled since I've last seen my patient, I highlight the medication, click on the cancel, and you'll notice that I need to input a reason for cancellation. Usually a cancellation is due to a data entry error, or if a patient refuses to take or a wrong order, but I'll just enter that this is canceled because of a data entry error. I click submit. I review that I've canceled this med. I click OK, and when I go back into the screen, it will fall under the canceled home meds header. If a patient's been discontinued since last seen, I highlight the medication, click on the discontinue tab. Again, I need to answer a reason why this has been discontinued. Perhaps the prescription has been completed. I highlight my submit button. I'm taken into my MedRec summary tab. I review that this med's been DC'd, click on OK, and that medication will now fall under my discontinued home meds. Please note that there are multiple headers available in the MedRec routine. You have your home meds, canceled home meds, discontinued home meds. If the patient is an inpatient, you'll see a current inpatient med, and you'll see a past inpatient medications list if applicable. Once we've completed obtaining our patient's medication history, and if the patient is being admitted to hospital, we need to print off the patient's best possible medication history for admissions orders. This report replaces our old manually transcribed AMRAW form. To achieve this, we click on the Print tab, we click on the Other Reports tab, and click on the down arrow, and we would choose the BPMH for admission order routine. Unfortunately, it's not currently available, but it will be there for go live. But let's pretend that this is the report we need to print. We click on the Print tab and input the printer we want to print to. Once we have chosen that device, we click on OK and click on OK, and that report will be printed out. Once that BPMH is printed out, the physician needs to reconcile that for the admission orders. This concludes our electronic medication reconciliation e-learning video. Just a few reminders before you go. The staff member responsible for admitting the patient is responsible for updating the patient's home med list and printing off the BPMH for admission orders report. This replaces the old AMRAW form. If the patient is being admitted from eMERGE, then the eMERGE nurse is responsible for updating the medication reconciliation home med list and printing off the new report. If the patient is a direct admission to an inpatient department, the admitting nurse is responsible for updating the med list and printing off the new BPMH for admission orders. This is a new process for the inpatient areas. Once the report is printed, the MRP needs to reconcile the medications on the paper report. Once reconciled, the report is scanned to pharmacy where the orders are processed. Please remember that AMROF now equals BPMH. I'd also like to note that we are going to continue our current practice when we are transferring a patient. We need to print off the transfer medication reconciliation order report from our pharmacy routine on our menu. Important to note that the sending unit must print off this report prior to discharging. The receiving unit is responsible for reconciling the orders, so the MRP on the receiving unit is responsible for reconciling that transfer report. We will for now continue to print off the discharge medication reconciliation list, and the transfer and discharge medication reconciliation process will be changing with phase 2 of this project. Look to more information in the new year.